So about that, I was gonna ask you a couple of questions about Bottle Rocket because I watched it last night actually to
Okay.
prepare, and it was a really well done movie. I think it was not obviously like since it was your first movie, it was not as stylized, right, as your later works. So I was just
Yes.
thinking, I was like wondering if um like did the inkling of like the typical Wes Anderson style like start there?
Yeah,
Or did you like, throughout your other eight works or something, like did that develop like with each movie?
I think a combination of both those really. It was Wes's first film, and I think obviously as he went on as a director, he had a much better grasp of the medium, and he'd never done a movie before. So I think the first one he relied on me a lot more as far as just setting things up and doing things. But he's a quick learner, obviously. And then Rushmore was kind of more of a breakout film for him. Bottle Rocket was actually not that well received when it came out, and
Yeah.
it wasn't until later that people kind of discovered the film. And Rushmore kind of people noticed him a lot more. All of a sudden, people kind of sat up and said, "Who is this guy?" And that's I think that's where a lot of his style started to really take off, and uh, and it just it keeps going more and more. I think another big influence was when he started doing the animated films,
Hmm. Right.
and I don't do those, but so much they really influence how we shoot today often, and so I don't want to say what we're shooting more cartoony, but in some ways we are, and I think that with post-production techniques as they are now, anything is possible really. And when we started, everything was in camera. We shoot film, and we
Right.
never had any visual effects back then. And now, because of his work, and I think, yeah, this is just me. I mean, he might disagree with this, but because of his work with Fantastic Mr. Fox, and he just kind of learned a lot on how you can put things together, elements together.
Hmm.
And we still shoot pretty much everything live, but there are certain situations where we're now blending elements together, or building a miniature, or doing things like that, which we never would have done early on. So I think it's also just post-production techniques have become so much more sophisticated than they used to be.
Right.
So, we utilize those if we need them, for sure. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
super interesting to hear about.
yeah.
And you mentioned a lot of like working with Mr. Anderson, and I was kind of wondering how did you like and him start kind of collaborating, and in general, how do cinematographers usually get attached to these projects?
Well, he was before I met him, he was a fan of a movie I did called Drugstore Cowboy. He really liked
Right.
that movie, and so he sent me a letter, which I still have. Thinking I should put it in a frame and put it on the wall. And this was, back. I don't know when they invented the internet, but I don't think there was an internet back then. And it was a handwritten letter that I got in the mail, and um, so I met him, and he was quite a bit younger than me, but we just kind of hit it off, and we just talked about movies, and talked about his movie, and I could see that even though he didn't have a lot of experience, that he was a bright guy, and he had a real strong kind of vision for his film, and
Mhm.
we just kind of hit it off, and so I said yes, and that was it, and then he was living in Dallas at that time with Owen and Luke Wilson, who are brothers, and so I went down to Dallas, and everybody just kind of welcomed me as one of the team. And so, we hung out and talked about the movie, and they were all excited. They're making their first movie, and,
Mm.
they were young kids. And, I think they're all about 23, 24, 25 years old. And
Right.
it it was a really kind of fun experience, for all of us, and they were very excited about it, of course. So I love the enthusiasm that they had, because they were a bunch of kids finally getting some money to make their movie,
Yeah.
And there's something very fresh and exciting about that. So, and then I did Rushmore, and it just kept, you know, moving along. Every movie got bigger and bigger
Right.
casts and
Yeah.
bigger, a stronger vision, and
Right.
it just keeps evolving as we go. So, it's. I'm about to start another one with Wes. We're shooting in Spain this summer. In fact, I had a Zoom with him yesterday for where we just started getting the ball rolling and talking about all kinds of different things, and related to the movie. And there's a lot of time where you're kind of just chatting, about things, and it may or may not have anything to do with the film, but it's all, in the end, it all has an influence on the film. I think it's just whether it's specific or not. Sometimes it's not anything specific that has to do with it at all. So
Right.
Right.
yeah.
And nowadays, does he kind of reach out to you on the next project, or do you kind of work on it together?
Well, he writes the script, and I'm not involved in that.
Right.
And he then sends me the script, and it starts and it starts a lot of emails, really. If he has ideas, he pictures or things. And starting with Moonrise Kingdom, he does what we call an animatic, which is like a little cartoon of the film, and it's pretty sophisticated. And Wes kind of voices all the characters, and it's kind of it's like a little cartoon of the actual film. And he we use that as kind of our guide. And on this particular film we're about to do, a lot of it's out in the desert in Spain, and we're actually going to build a little town. And so
Oh,
the
wow.
town will be built, at least the exteriors, and and the interiors are actually part of it as well, to the specifications of what the shots.
Right.
So it's very kind of carefully laid out, and even like Moonrise Kingdom, if you remember that film, the beginning where they have the dolly shots to the house, that was actually in a giant warehouse, and we built the interior, not the exterior, which was real. But we couldn't shoot in the actual house because the rooms were too small, and we couldn't do the shots Wes wanted. So we got this old warehouse, and we built the interior of the house in the warehouse. And we actually went and we have a director's finder, and you could use an Artemis Pro or whatever and do it. But we just kind of laid out where every room would be, and we talk through the dialogue because it has to be specific to the dialogue.
Right.
So it was very carefully kind of planned out, and but that's as we go along, everything is very, particularly as we build things, we start with the blank space, and then we kind of lay it out with tape on the floor where to build it. And then Adam Stockhausen, the production designer, and his art team will come in, and they'll build the sets that have kind of mapped out a little bit beforehand, just so we know they're very specific, the kinds of shots that he's looking for. So that's kind of how it all works. There's a lot of prep time that goes into it, and we shoot a lot of tests, and so that by the time we go to shoot the movie, it's pretty figured out. It's not like we're ever sitting on the set going, oh, how are we going to do this? I mean,
Right.
some directors like to work that way, where they don't want to commit to anything, and so they wait till the actors are there, and they work it all out with the actors, and then we figure out how to shoot it. And that's fine. I mean, but with Wes, because he has such a distinct vision, it's all kind of figured out beforehand. And it's very art department heavy. So they have to, I mean, he scrutinizes every prop, everything, the wardrobe, everything. And so it's all kind of, coming out of his head. And I think that's why his movies have such a distinct look to them, is that
Mhm.
they're not like a hodgepodge of a bunch of different things. It's something that's all very well thought out and oftentimes tested beforehand, so it's all kind of worked out during the prep. And then when the
Yeah.
actors get there, we're much more streamlined and we know what we have to do to make it work. And so we can shoot very quickly when the actors are there because of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing to hear. I was fortunate enough to shoot my first movie, first short movie over this past weekend.
Okay.
I feel like I definitely could have benefited from planning it out a little bit more, like you and Wes. I was, you know how like on the first day of like whatever movie you're shooting, like you want to set the tone. Um, I my crew and cast got caught in a thunderstorm that day. So that really set the mood for the entire production.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely love to hear about the planning process, because I feel like I've heard you say to the Studio Duke people that Wes is like definitely one of those like really meticulous and rigorous planners. And I
Yeah.
think that really translated across like on screen.
Yeah.
That's why everything looks so detailed and so colorful and so symmetrical, which is really cool.
I recently got, and I'm not hawking any kind of gear or any kind of equipment, but I recently got an app, Artemis Pro,
Artists
and
Pro.
and it's a app that if you get it, and it's not expensive. Don't get regular Artemis. I used to have that and I hated it. It never worked. But the Artemis Pro is much better, and they have a menu where you can choose a film camera, a digital camera, and they have pretty much everything. And so you choose the camera, and then you choose the kind of lenses you're going to be shooting. And then you can go to the actual locations with the director and say, oh, this is what a 35 millimeter looks like. And sometimes it would be useful if you have a couple of people with you, you just kind of block it out, and then you
Right.
could take stills or you could take film of it, and you don't light it, you just go with whatever the existing light is. And that would be something that you could do in prep that might help you later. And obviously things can change. And other than Wes, every movie I've ever worked on, we make a plan, but it always changes,
Yeah.
With Wes, very rarely, occasionally, but not often. I mean, you pretty much do what was decided beforehand. But the Artemis Pro is a handy little tool. And it's just, and if you just want to take stills, at least you have something that you can refer to later. And you sit down with the director and the art department and say, this is what we're going to see, and so then the art department knows what they have to dress, and the director, and you have kind of decided what the shots are. And with the Artemis Pro, you can even, it has a little thing underneath the picture that tells you the lens and everything. So you have a record of it all. And so I think that's something that and there's other apps as well. I mean, I'm sure there's other ones, but the one I happen to have is the Artemis Pro. And
Yeah.
I use a lot in commercials because, they have to show the agencies what we're thinking.
Mhm.
And so I've been using it for like probably a year now. And so when we scout the commercials, I just take it and I take pictures and I give it to the art department. I give it to the director, the producer, and they're oftentimes they just send it to the agency, and just to get approvals. And certainly the art department loves it because they don't know what they don't have the ability to know what we're going to see. And this way, I have a pretty specific frame for them to look at, and they know, we're probably going to address that frame, and we're not going to address, that frame over there. We're just dressing this frame right here, and so it's a very handy tool. And they always send me an email. Thanks for that. Oh, I really appreciate it. And it's pretty simple, and it also gives us something to work with. Again, it might change, and it sometimes does, but at least you start somewhere and you have a plan, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, yeah. I was just relying on a shot list like of images in my mind.
Yeah.
So that would have been really helpful.
Yeah, and or else even if you have just a little, you don't even need Artemis Pro. I mean, if you just want to take your phone and just take pictures, it doesn't have lenses or anything, but the Artemis Pro takes you to the next step. And or the very first time I ever did this, I did this movie, The Squid and the Whale, many years ago, and this was when little digital cameras first were coming out. So I bought one, and this movie was very low budget, and so we would just go to the locations and we kind of storyboarded with the digital camera. I'm sure I wasn't the first person to do this, but it was really helpful because then I could email everybody my photos, and that was just off this little digital camera, and it really helped a lot of people, and it allowed me to kind of think about how we were going to shoot it as well. Oftentimes, if I'm on location, usually I'm in a hotel or apartment, and I will take a lot of pictures of the locations and I just put them up on my walls, and so I come home at night and I pop a beer or a glass of wine and I just kind of sit and look at the pictures, and it gives you time alone to just look at things and kind of absorb it all. And then you can kind of maybe see, if you put them up, a string of them, you can kind of start to see how the movie's going to be. It gives you a chance to kind of get an overall picture of the movie because it's all right there in front of you, on a wall. And I find that's really helpful, and again, it's not lit. You're probably not on the right lens or anything, but it just gives you a feeling and a sense of what you're going to be making a film.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah.
That's going to be super helpful for my next semester short film. So
who's is it? Is Josh Gibson the teacher? Who teaches these things?
Oh, you mean like filming in general or like
Yeah. Well, the
production?
production side, when you're shooting stuff.
Yeah. So I actually shot it through Freewater Productions. It's like
Okay,
the
yeah.
student run organization.
Sure, I know.
And Steve Milligan was like the original
Yeah.
advisor, but
I know,
this
Steve.
year, yeah, this year he got kicked off, unfortunately.
Oh, really? Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, I know. So it was mostly self-taught, And then Steve came in on the final day to help me set up like a bunch of shots, which was super helpful because it was my first time. So definitely learning from his experience was insightful, super helpful.
What cameras were you using?
I was using the Blackmagic Ursa.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a Blackmagic Compact. Is that the similar or no? Yeah.
I heard a lot about the Pocket Cinema camera. Is that
Do
the
we
one?
have?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. Because I wanted one for like Black Friday, but I don't think it was on sale. So, but I think this one is like slightly more expensive.
Okay.
I think it also has like more options and stuff, but I think the Blackmagic Pocket is like still really good.
We bought it 2 years ago. My son was, I told you he's a soccer player, so we
Right.
were making these little documentaries and things, and
Yes.
I bought it was like $1,200 for the camera.
Yeah,
And then I bought a zoom lens for like $800, so it was like $2,000, and I have this. And then we also have the Canon 5D, which we use, and it's like got a long zoom on it. I forget what it's 70 to 300 zoom or something like that, which is helpful in soccer because you're so far away all the
yeah,
time.
exactly.
And actually, we could use a use a longer zoom if we, but they get the longer they are, the more expensive they are. But that 70 to 300 is a pretty good little lens, and I use it and shoot soccer all the time, and it's fun. It's good. So. But both those cameras are great.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I was about to say, your son must feel like a professional soccer player with a Blackmagic filming his play.
Yeah. Well, I think we do better than the rest of the parents because they're all shooting on their phones.
Yeah, on their phones.
I think
Digital
our
Zoom.
shots are a little bit better, and I use a tripod, and I mean, I'm a little more professional now. Sometimes you can get some great shots just off your phones too. So
Exactly. Yeah.
you got to be a little lucky in sports, because it's a little tricky. You shoot a lot for not a lot to get a lot back, but
Yeah. Yeah.
good experience.
His highlight reel must be pretty insane, like pretty really high quality, like
Well, yeah, I mean, he's getting there, because he switched. He was goalkeeper for a long time, and he
okay.
switched to he's a right wing now, and he's scoring goals and stuff. But sometimes I'm behind him when I'm shooting it.
Yeah.
You always feel like you're not in the right place. Very rarely are you in the perfect right place to be, and so I try to get kind of down near the goal so they're coming at you, rather than otherwise they're just like little guys running away.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like this. But now if you're in the goal, they're coming at you, and that's a lot more dynamic. So I try to get back behind a goal somewhere and get some shots, which you can get good ones.
Definitely.
And kind of speaking about that, kind of leads into our next question is like, what are your kind of favorite shots to work on and conceptualize versus your least favorites to work on?
Well, I like crane shots a lot. We use a techno crane, not with Wes. He doesn't like techno cranes, but I think that it gives you a lot of flexibility.
Right.
And if you know what a techno crane is, do you guys know what that is? It's a crane that you can put on a track, but it also telescopes in and out.
Right.
And so you can go sideways, in and out. You can go high, low, and they make them in different lengths. Like I think the smallest one's about 15 feet and the tallest one's like 55 feet or something. And they have lengths in between. Usually the ones I use are like 35 or 45 feet long. And you're able to get a lot of really dynamic shots pretty quickly off those things. It's all remote. You have a monitor and you operate the camera remotely. With Wes, we don't use those. It's more old fashioned, and it's a lot of whip pans and things. Those are the hardest ones, but they're also in some ways the most satisfying when you nail those shots, because I do it all by hand, and
right.
Those are. One time I can tell you a story on Grand Budapest Hotel. There was a scene at the end of the movie where all the actors are kind of coming out of rooms at the top floor of the hotel, and there's a gunfight going on. And
I love that one. I love that scene.
And if you watch it again, there's a shot where I have to swing it around to here, to here, to here, to here, to here, going all around and getting different things. And because we were so high, the grips made a scaffolding for me to stand on, which was like 4 flights off the ground.
Oh, wow.
And typically how I do those shots is it's on a tripod and I kind of move around as I'm doing them, but because the scaffold was so high, as I was moving, it was causing it to go like this, and I knew, that was not going to work. And it was because of me moving around so quickly on it that was causing it to shake. So I was thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And so then there's an old trick that people use, and you get a laser pointer, and I attached it to the front of the camera, and I pointed it down on the ground, on the floor of the tower I was in. And then I put little X's with tape like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh my God.
And so then I could just operate the camera without moving, and I was doing this 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's how I did it. And it worked. I usually like to look through it, because it's film. And I just move around and do it that way. But that was one situation where I couldn't do it that way. And I had to think pretty fast on my feet in order to figure that one out. And it worked. And I remember, I think we probably shot 15 takes of it or so. And
wow.
I remember when Wes said, okay, we got it. We got it. I've never been so. Oh, thank God. It's over.
Wow.
So it was a very challenging shot for me. And I love operating, and a lot of the shots with Wes are very, very challenging.
Hmm.
And it's so, but when you can pull it off, it really, it's very, you feel really good when you can do it. It's kind of, people has said this, having used to be a basketball player, it's very much like sports, because you kind of
Yeah.
go into it and you're mentally just focusing really hard on something. And and particularly some of these shots, it's kind of, there's a lot of, not really athletic, but in some ways, yes, it's moving around on a dolly, when moving with it was very fast and everything.
Right.
And so it's not unlike sports, and just you kind of get in the zone, and you're just kind of concentrating, and everything else is out, you're not even thinking
Yeah.
about it,
Would you say your basketball career led you up to this point?
well, it helped. I think when you work on a crew, it's like being on a team,
Yeah.
and you're dependent on your crew just like you're dependent on your team, and everybody's got to pull their weight. And my very first job in the business, I got there was a famous commercial director named Joe Pitka, and he was a hoops player. And during his downtime at the office, they had a hoop out back in the driveway, so he needed someone to go out and shoot hoops with him. And so because I'd been playing basketball, I got hired to shoot hoops with Joe. That was my first job in the business. So the only reason they hired me was because I could play hoops. And so, it did lead to something, I guess. But, I after about 3 months, I moved on and did something else. But, that was my first job. So, I guess hoops has helped me with that.
So I guess you could say you were a professional basketball player. 'Cause they paid you to play.
Well, I was even before that, because back then, when the seniors at Duke and Carolina, because they had used up their eligibility, they would do this thing called barnstorming, where everyone would get paid like $100 or something,
Oh, really?
and they would do these scrimmage games, and we would play around North Carolina. And so they always needed some extra guys. And so, because I do all the basketball players, they asked me, hey, you want to come? And, so I would sit on the bench. I'd get in the games, but, they would play because the people came to see them. These were Duke and Carolina players. And, but, I made a little money that way too, a couple $100 or whatever, which back then was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that was my first professional basketball.
Okay, got you. Okay.
I guess I used up my eligibility, because once you get paid, you can't go back and play college anymore. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
But I was a senior in college, and I thought, you know what? I don't think my career is really going anywhere. I took $100.
I feel like you got it's like moving from the G League to NBA. Like you moved from Duke to be playing basketball and hoops with a renowned commercial director. So I feel
actually the Duke guys were way better than he was. And he was good. I mean, he was bigger than me. He played a different game because he was bigger. He'd take me inside.
Okay.
And I was more a small little finesse guy. I would shoot from the outside.
Right.
I was not, I'm kind of skinny, and I wasn't like, at Duke, I would never go inside because they would just swap my shot every time.
Yeah.
I was the guy who would bring the ball up and pass to a big guy, or if you left me open, I could hit an open jumper. If you left me open, I'd hit it. But I couldn't really create. Like so many of the players today can create so well. I wasn't that guy, and I would never. Anytime I ever drove and tried to shoot, I would get blocked, and they would just.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like 5'9", so I'm even shorter than you. So I always try to think of myself as a playmaker.
Yep, that's what
I like to string passes together. Same position in soccer as well. So
Yeah.
I definitely see that.
Well, drive and dish. That was what I would do. I would try to drive and then I would just dish it off.
you're just-
That's smart.
And you know, it's interesting because my son, who doesn't play basketball but soccer, he sees the whole. He's like a point guard. He sees the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
field,
yeah.
he makes the right pass every time, and he really is good that way. Where he kind of he'll see the and he'll make the right pass. He'll lead the guy just the perfect amount, and you know, I'm really impressed by his passing. Really, you know.
Yeah, it's surprising that he's more of a Ronaldo fan when Messi is
Yeah.
more renowned for passing,
Passing.
creating.
He doesn't
So
like Messi for some reason. I don't
that's
know. I don't. You know, I don't know, because I tease about Messi because I've been to Argentina and I have some Argentinian friends and they're very big Messi fans, and so I just take the other side and say Messi.
oh yeah, you got it, you got
Yeah,
it.
he shuts me down. You know, Ronaldo is. They're different games. You know, Messi's a little more finesse. Ronaldo's
Right.
a physical
Right,
big guy, and you know,
that's fair. That's fair.
yeah.
What's his before we get into the next part? What's his biggest argument for Ronaldo as opposed to Messi?
More, I think Ronaldo's has more championships and more
Fair.
goals, and he's won everywhere he's been, and Messi recently has been under a lot of controversy, I guess, because of the club, and Barcelona wasn't doing so well, and
Right. Yeah.
leave. He tried to leave, and they wouldn't let him go, and for some reason he just has always liked Ronaldo, and so that's all right. I mean, I don't know if you follow, but I was Kevin De Bruyne. I like Kevin De Bruyne.
He's on my fantasy team. He's not
Oh,
really
okay.
he's not really contributing a lot to my team because he's always out injured.
Yeah, it's been a bad year. Been a bad year for you.
Yeah, exactly. Are you following Champions League right now?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I just got through the college basketball thing, and I'm taking
Okay.
a break. I mean, I followed all the way to I watched the final game, and
Right.
even though Duke wasn't in it,
Still had to. Yeah.
yeah,
Still had to.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Our next part, just to jump into it, because I think we have 15 minutes left, is
Okay.
more of a experimental segment, I would say. We're gonna try
Okay.
to pinpoint some of the shots that we think that we really liked from your work,
Okay, sure.
and try to learn how you framed it, how you lighted it,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So can you see the screen right now?
Yes, I can.
It's shot deck.
Yep.
I
I know Larry Shear quite well.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it on the Studio Duke talk as well. So
Okay. Yep.
so yesterday I was watching Bottled Rock and I was very impressed by this shot, not only because of the color, but because of like the exposure and the lighting.
Yep.
Because in the background, like the sky is still pretty bright and the foreground is like, not super dark. So
Yep.
I was just wondering, like, what were the lights that you used to shoot this, and like how much of it was natural light as opposed to artificial?
Well, this particular shot, because 99% of the movie was shot on a 27 millimeter lens,
Okay.
and it was 185. This was shot on the 27. The sun, as you can see, is coming from the right side. And then we filled it with a white card. I mean, one thing we do on Wes's films is very rarely use lights on day exteriors. And we just try to shoot in the right time of day. You can see it's kind of late afternoon. And just to bring up the shadows a little bit, I'm sure there was a white card just to the left side of the camera. And the color on this one, I would be willing to bet $1,000 we used a polarizer on it. And,
Okay.
I think that's what makes that color seem so saturated, and that particular hue and stuff was the polarizer. Again, I can't remember specifically, but it looks to me very much like a polarized shot. So, and it helped bring out the sky.
Yeah.
And you can see how lush the green is and the blue.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that a lot of that was the polarizer, to be honest.
Okay, got you. Yeah, I was blown away by the pool color, the the grass, the trees in the background, and the sky. Yeah, I just thought this was a
Well,
great shot.
interestingly enough, that pool, when we first shot it, for some reason, the water was kind of green.
Oh,
We
okay.
did a night shot in it, and we had to drain it and put more, because we were there kind of in like more Novemberish.
Okay.
So they had drained their pool. It was anyway. So we were there at night. There's a little trick for you. And there was a scene where Luke here, who's in here, and Lumi, the girl, they were swimming in the pool at night, and the water was green. And Wes was like, "Oh man, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?" And so we put blue gels on our lights, and we had some underwater HMIs as well. And we just put blue gels on them, and that colored the water.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's how we did it. But this one, I think by then we had kind of cleared out the, they had to empty the pool and because there was
Got it.
something with the water or something.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I thought that was all natural, so you fooled me for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to pull one out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Got to do it.
another shot that we were kind of wondering was the shot with Agatha in the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yep.
I believe I saw a behind the scenes video where the camera was on a rig that rotated during the kind of
Yes.
scenes where she's on a horse. What are
Yes.
the challenges with building that whole rig and setting that up?
Well, basically, either you see this particular angle or you see like from the inside of the rig looking out.
Right.
And so we built like kind of a miniature little merry-go-round kind of thing
Mhm.
that the grips behind us would be, pulling around, pushing around, I mean. And it was more about what we were seeing outside. Again, this particular shot was kind of set up more particularly for this particular shot, but it was more, and we found a place that was literally like a 2-minute walk from our hotel, and we were in Germany.
Right.
And we didn't need all the horses of a merry-go-round because you only see a couple of them really,
Right.
and so it was like a giant turntable where the camera was on and the actors were on, and it was just kind of spun around. Do you know what Lazy Susan is, kind of thing? It's kind of
Yeah.
like a turntable where people put food on and you can move it around if you're in the middle of the table. It was kind of on that was kind of the idea. And so there really wasn't a merry-go-round. It was just
Right.
something the art department built that was a platform that would rotate around that we could put the camera on and the actors on, and that's how we did it. You'll never see a big wide shot of the merry-go-round
Right.
because
Yeah.
it didn't exist. It just didn't exist.
Disappointing.
Wow.
Disappointing.
And
Yeah.
so was the lighting also like attached to the rig and spinning
Yes,
with
the lighting
Wow.
was attached to the rig. And in today's world, I'd probably use LEDs that were battery operated, but that back then we didn't have those kind of lights. And so these are tungsten lights. And so after we would go around several times in one direction, we would have to cut and then rewind it, because the cable kept going around and around and around, so we would get maybe 4 or 5 rotations, and then we would have to cut and rewind because of all the cables and stuff. So
Right.
that was how that worked.
Got it. Yeah. So was this shot on like an 85 lens?
This particular shot, yeah, I mean, typically Wes uses wider lenses. This could have been a 50 or
Okay.
75 maybe. We, usually a lot of our shots are more in the 20, 25 range, and sometimes even 18, but this doesn't look like an 18 to me, or a 25.
Right.
It's probably
Right.
a little bit longer, maybe
Okay.
a 50. Yeah. I'm going to guess it's a 50 because we usually don't use long lenses very
Right.
rarely.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because I was trying to shoot some bokeh effects for my short, and it's pretty difficult. So with the widescreen lens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it is a little difficult, and the key is if you can. I mean, typically shoot a little more wide open, and the backgrounds will be
Right.
softer, you know, so you shoot at 2.8, not 11, you know, and you know, the backgrounds will start to go more, this is kind of more of a, you know, it's a fantasy moment, really, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So rather than be specific about the backgrounds, I think, you know, we wanted more of the fantasy element to it. So
Right. Okay. So like when you shoot, I guess like more comedic scenes versus more dramatic scenes, do you kind of differentiate that in terms of like soft versus hard lighting, or do you kind of all shoot it in soft lighting but with different, I guess, techniques?
I think, you know, I typically use softer light on the actors and harder light on the backgrounds, because you can control the harder light. Now, if it's a particular scene that's very dramatic, I might, you know, I might use a bit harder light. You know, there's different levels of diffusion you can put in front of the lights.
Right.
And, you know, very heavy diffusion makes it much softer. And the bigger the source, the softer the light will be. So in this particular, it's pretty soft. So, you know, that means that the fusion layer is pretty close to her face, and we're probably hitting her with like a 1K or something, you know, and from the left side.
Got
And then
it.
just let the other side fall off, you know, and you can see it's a little bluer. And that was because, you know, we used tungsten lights, and then the daylight would photograph a little cooler. So that was, you know, one light on her, and then the practicals behind her, really. And
Gotcha.
you know, I think the thing that a lot of young cinematographers do, and I did for sure, particularly in film, was you overlight. You get nervous and you put too many lights on. And
Right.
you know, my advice to you, like, you know, when you walk into a room, like say a classroom, for instance, there's these overhead fluorescent lights, you know, and if you're going to shoot there, the first thing I always do is just start by turning all the lights off, seeing what's there. And generally it's more interesting, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, people often think, oh, let's go and turn all the lights on. Well, you know, I'm just the opposite. I turn all the lights off, you know, and obviously you need a exposure, but you know, immediately, and just try the next time you're in a classroom, you know, just turn all the lights off, or even in your room, Brandon, you know, you got a window there,
Oh yeah.
you know.
I tried to shut the blinds because otherwise the light would have been too harsh.
Sure, okay,
Um
sure. No, but you
yeah.
know, just try and just play around sometimes, just when you go into a room, you know, whether it's your dorm room or wherever you are, or wherever, and just, um, I remember years ago I came to Duke. This is a long time ago, probably 15 years, and uh, Josh was teaching a class, and it was in a classroom, you know. And the very first thing I did when we started talking about lighting was I went and I turned all the overheads off, and all we had was the window light. And it looked so much better, you know. And I
Yeah.
was using that as an example to the class. You know, I said, you know, just start with nothing, and then you can add if you want. And then maybe you just add some of the overheads. Maybe if you can, if they're on different switches, or you know, it's just, you want contrast in an image generally, you know, unless the film calls for everything to be very flat lit.
Yeah.
Some do, you know, but the more you can add a little contrast, the more interesting it generally is visually. And the shot of Saoirse, you know, it has some contrast to it, which I think makes it a little more interesting to
Yeah.
me.
No, I definitely agree with
Right.
that. I
You
definitely
know,
agree with that. Okay, so we're
And
gonna end off with like one or two more general questions, but
yeah.
oh,
And like you kind of mentioned having that kind of contrast or dramatic style. And I think like for aspiring cinematographers like Brandon and myself, how do you kind of differentiate between trying to create a style for the sake of it, but also trying to create a style to something that like adds to the film you're shooting?
I think the second is the way to go, and something that many cinematographers, again, myself included, you're always kind of drawn to making the most beautiful image, and oftentimes that's not what's called for,
Right.
and sometimes something grittier and dirtier is much better for the film. And I think you have to work out with the director, what do you want this to look like? And is it everything backlit with long lenses and kind of dreamy, or is it more handheld in your face? And it's a criticism I have for a lot of films that I see, is that everyone gets so hung up on making these beautiful images that you kind of lose track of what's this movie about. I saw a film recently, Judas and the Black Messiah, which I really like. I love the cinematography on it, because it was beautiful, but it had a grit to it,
Right.
and I felt like it really kind of it was beautiful, but it captured that what the feeling was of the film. It was dark. They were bold with what they did, and they
Right.
very, sometimes the actors are really dark, and sometimes,
Yeah.
and I really like that, as opposed to, if it had been very bright and over, again, if it was all backlit with beautiful lighting all the time, I think that would have been inappropriate for that film.
Right.
And so that was one example that I saw recently that I really love the photography, and even Nomadland, which was shot with a lot of natural light and very low budget. I mean, it was beautifully shot. Maybe it was even a little bit too beautiful. I don't know. I mean, I liked the film. Another one, that I liked was Minari. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
I just thought the photography was beautiful, but it was right for the film, and
Right.
really kind of, I mean, they weren't afraid to go out in the sun at noon and shoot in some kind of harsh light sometimes, and a lot of it has to do with their schedule. They probably didn't have a lot of money, I don't think, but it also kind of fit, and the people's lives. I that was a film I really enjoyed as well, Minari.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one?
I've seen the first two, but not Minari.
Oh, I was
Okay.
It's
able to
something
see
on my watch
Minari.
list for sure.
Well, check out Minari. It's an interesting movie, and the actors are great. And I actually had the ASC awards are this Sunday, and they asked me if I would introduce one of the films, so
Really?
I chose Minari.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. I
No,
just thought that it was very appropriate. And again, it's not the most beautiful movie ever made, but the photography really kind of fit and you felt it was all part of a real world. And it's about this Korean American family who moved to the wilds of Arkansas, and
Right.
the farmlands, and just their kind of internal struggles, and just trying to fit into the community. And I felt it was really well told, really interesting. The story was really interesting, and the guy who plays the dad is great. I mean, he's amazing, and
Yeah.
oh yeah.
I think he's
Oh
up for
yeah.
the Academy Award. I'm pretty
Yeah, I
sure.
think Stephen Yeun, right?
Stephen Yeun.
Yes. Yeah. He's
It's
good.
also a great progress for Asian Americans, which I'm really happy
Yeah.
about, Mirage. So it's nice
Yeah.
to have it recognized as such.
Well, about time, right?
Yeah, I
And
know.
certainly, Nomadland is a Chinese woman who made it.
Yeah, first female director who might win the Best Director award,
Yeah.
the
Oh, she's the
Oscar.
favorite at this point,
Yeah,
and uh, you know, I think the Hispanic community and the Asian community has been overlooked for far too long. And Parasite did win last year, I guess, but
that was amazing.
yeah, but it was a good movie. It
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
good movie. And
I mean, I think up until the day, I think it was like 1917 was the favorite, right?
Probably.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then Parasite surprised us, which was refreshing to see.
Well, it was a really good movie too. I mean, I was a big 1917 fan, but
Yeah,
at the same time, I thought when Parasite won, I was totally fine with that. I mean,
yeah.
I liked it a lot, and I thought that director is super talented, and the actors were great, and interesting story, and I liked the way it looked. I thought it was well shot, and but yeah, I mean, I think America is slowly, begrudgingly changing, and and
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
mean,
it's about
slow,
time.
yeah, slow but steady, wins the race.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so we're gonna end off with one final question is
Go.
um, out of all the movies that you've worked on or ones that you've watched, what would you say is your absolute favorite if you had to choose?
Well, of all the ones I've worked on, I'm going to give you two answers. One for the ones I've worked on, one of my favorite of all time. Of all the movies I've worked on, because I get asked this question a lot, and it's always difficult because each one is unique and different, and so many great memories. You hate to just put one down,
Right.
but I would have to, if I had to just choose one, I would choose the Grand Budapest Hotel. Not only did I really like the movie a lot, but just making it, we were in this little town in winter in Germany on the Polish border, and everybody was very, just such a great group of people, and
Hmm.
we had a lot of fun making it, and the actors were wonderful, and the movie turned out really well. So, I mean, all the above. Um, but so many other ones. I mean, like when I went to India, that was such a adventure, going to India and spending my time there, and it's so different in India than it is here in the States, and just
Yeah.
that's a life adventure that
Yeah.
I'll never forget. And the movie didn't do as well as Grand Budapest Hotel, but it doesn't mean it's a bad movie or a good movie. It just didn't catch the public imagination like the others did. And but when I think about just life experiences, probably the one going to India.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah, for
really, I
sure.
was there for like 5 months, and
Wow.
you get into a whole different rhythm of life when you're in
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
culture like that. And I remember when we came back to the United States, we all just went through shell shock, because we're all of a sudden, because you got used to that Indian kind of rhythm of life, and we kind of became like that, and then also we're back in the United States where everything's like this. It was just like, it was a different experience. As far as my favorite movie ever, I might have to go with Lawrence of Arabia, and I love the cinematography, the scale of it, and I think Peter O'Toole is just amazing in the film. And it looks amazing, and they don't make movies like that anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
everything's
Yeah.
CGI now, and like when they have 200 guys riding horses, firing guns, charging into Aqaba. There's 200 guys on the horses. Today they'd be all CGI,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that when you get to the CGI stuff, it just you kind of see it,
Yeah. It
and
doesn't feel the same. That's for
no,
sure.
it doesn't.
Lose the
And I
magic.
think it's an amazing, just an amazing story. And just, I remember seeing it as a kid and just being just so like, wow, and Peter O'Toole is just amazing in the film. It's just
Yeah.
the grandness of it is just so amazing. So I guess that would be my answer. But again, there's been so many movies, Citizen Kane, and
Yeah.
there's been so many great movies that
Yeah. That's fair.